Just some of that I think we'll get to. And I would say, Meg, thanks for the nice intro and for having me today with everyone here. I think we'll certainly, part of this, we're going to have story time. So I hope everybody is ready on sounds like a long day of, excitement, celebration, support, that we're going to have a little bit of story time and, sharing maybe some of the trials and tribulations that I faced well into my 40s and what I've taken from there. And I wish I knew 10, 20, 30 years ago.
All right. I'm going to step back from the stage, give you the main stage, and just let me know if you need any help.
Sure. And hopefully some grace from everyone. I will say I'm much more of a numbers person than a tech person. So as I look to share a presentation work through it, I hope you are able to laugh along with me as we get this going. So I'm going to share screen, share this presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, y'all, if you have questions throughout this upcoming conversation, I've got eyes in the chat on the main stage. So if you've got questions, please feel free to send them in. I will grab those and bring them into this this event as well. So if you got questions, please feel free to send them in.
Okay, and I hope everybody, again, I'm sharing the right screen. Either way, if I'm not, you'll see my notes off to the side. Okay, as you mentioned, my name is Cynthia Kirpatrick. Part of what brought me here today is probably a lot of learning and leaning into myself, especially as a woman in the last several years, posting things that I thought were insightful, helpful, that I learned from. And lo and behold, by being myself, I've attracted just different opportunities and people in my life. And so we're kind of going to talk through why, how, what happened. But love to kind of flip it back to anybody that's out there and really ask if you've ever been in a situation where you were just doing it right. Everything you were doing right. You set ambitious goals. You worked hard. You were successful, but something was off. You weren't quite happy. You weren't sure why. Maybe you were miserable. You didn't feel like you fit and you felt stuck in what to do next. And I think as women, we often, at least I have through my years, often felt that way. I have everything. Why am I not happy? So if any of you have ever felt like that, or maybe you're feeling like that now, what if you could turn that around? What if success, happiness, fulfillment were all possible for you at the same time? And what would that change in your life? And more importantly, how can we do that? I'm a numbers person. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'll just say I've learned through time, reading, and mistakes along the way. So hopefully today, that's what we're going to talk about. And there are some things from some lessons that I've learned that I can share with you. We're going to start off with a couple quotes. I hope right now you can see this first quote, but something that really stuck out to me that I really love and we're going to cover today is maturity is learning to walk away from people and situations that threaten your peace of mind, your self-respect, values, morals, or self-worth. And happiness is that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. So if you saw a theme here, it's probably happiness and values. And how do we live by that? So now this is just a blank screen, but sharing that, in a former life, where I really learned all this was I was a star employee and leader. Not necessarily according to me, because I always have a hard time giving myself credit, but it was my team and my quarterly reviews. Almost all the time, top marks, impossible to get exceeds expectations, but I did on several occasions. So in the 7 years that I was there up to this experience, I never had a negative word mentioned, with a career trajectory projected to go straight to the top of my firm. As I left for maternity leave to have my third child, I received special praise from my leader for basically preparing the team and getting things set up for me to be out for 3 months. Shortly after I returned to work, it was time for another review. But this time there was a bit of a twist and things were off. I could use my female intuition. Things were off. The night before, my leader moved the meeting to a different floor in a different conference room. And by the way, her boss was suddenly scheduled to attend. That night, I remember sitting at home, telling my husband something's not right. And he thought I was crazy. He's like, whatever, hormones from a third baby, right? But those suspicions were correct. The next day, I felt like I was walking into an ambush, and I was right. Despite my previous reviews, my exceeds expectations, and missing a lot of that quarter being out with the baby, I was given a below expectations, one of the lowest possible reviews that could be. And they told me my two options were, I could quit, or I could forfeit my team, take a demotion, and a pay cut. Think about that. How would that make you feel? All of your emotions and your mind swirling, racing. But to me, mostly was what happened? Where did things change? It turns out that an underperforming teammate didn't like the review I gave her. She had a history of underperformance, bounced around from team to team, which may not matter except for the fact that her boyfriend was the partner over my area. She often bragged with a single word, or single statement that she could ruin anyone's career if she wanted to. And in this case, she chose mine. Needless to say, it was for an overachiever, A+, please everyone, get everything right. It was a very traumatic experience. And I wish I could say it doesn't haunt me today, but it still does. It's also made worse by the fact that my appeals to others in the firm were ignored, asking them to look at the facts. I learned then that the motto there was always protect the partner, which is what they did. But looking back, as hard as sometimes it is for me to say this, it was a gift. And leading up to that point, I had heard whispers that things were different. It was a time to make a change, but I didn't listen. So the universe, the world, was shaking me awake. And, if you've ever had a similar experience in your life, maybe you'll be able to see it as a gift too. The truth was, I was in a role that was unfulfilling. It was missing something, or maybe a whole lot of somethings. At that point, I was biding my time to transfer to another division at the firm in a totally different career path, going from accounting CPA to investment analyst. I made that sound way cooler than it actually is, I guess. But the demotion and the negative review were going to make that all but impossible. So I really, even though I saw myself staying at this company forever, I was going to have to leave. And for many years, I felt like I had this scarlet letter imprinted on my soul: shame, confusion, powerlessness. I've always succeeded. So how could I let this happen? But looking back, I see something important. There have been certain themes in my life when I've been successful and happy. All of those instances come back to my core values. It took me into my 40s, late 30s, 40s, to start thinking about who am I as a woman when I go to events for my kids or see a friend out at the store, introduced to somebody new. Who are you? I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a CPA. I didn't realize then that's not who I am. Those are the roles and the different hats that I wear. But that's really not who I am. And it wasn't until listening to some different books where I learned that I really needed to dive deeper. I really needed to get honestly intimate with myself and sit back and say, who am I? At the basic ground level, foundational floor of my entire life, when I've been happy, when I've been joyous, who is that Cynthia? Who are you? So all of the instances when I think of positivity and giving leads to these core values. positivity, service, helping others, personal growth, honesty, and integrity. I realized looking back that being at that division, that department, they had lost those things when I first joined, long before I left. And it was out of alignment with who I was and what I care about. So understandably, the only outcome was to leave and find a new place that aligned with my values. Honestly, again, I said into my 40s, why didn't I realize that before? How could I not see that before? And for so many of you, maybe you're in a similar situation. Maybe you're thinking, what do I do? Learning from this and other situations, I think I have part of the answer. So years ago, this is a picture, I'll explain, of part of our vacation. My family, 3 kids, husband, we were in Gulf Shores on vacation with family and friends. My 15-year-old, who was a permit driver and had his license or permit for long, maybe a few months, he was driving a car full of the guys, the men, to meet at dinner. And a friend was driving a really awesome minivan with the rest of us girls in it. And as we approach this intersection, that picture you're seeing right there, you'll notice this little kind of median that juts out. So we're having a blast, listening to songs, getting ready to turn left at the light ahead. And all of a sudden, this minivan goes airborne. I mean, we are like in the air, all shocked, wondering what had happened. And laughing a little bit after that shock wore off. So we get to our destination, we meet up with the guys, and the daughter of the woman who was driving goes up to her dad, Dad, you'll never believe what happened. Mom just drove over a median. And without hesitation, all of the men start laughing. We have no clue. Turns out my 15-year-old, about 10 minutes prior to us, had just done the same thing. And that got me thinking, by all appearances, the car that my husband's car that the guys drove, it looked fine, seemed to operate fine. The tires weren't deflated, but was it really? It was over 10 years old and far from its prime. What really happened underneath the car, with concrete and landscaping smashing the bottom at 35 miles per hour? Anything could surface at any minute. And we all needed these cars to drive us 10 hours back home when our vacations ended. 10 hours with my most precious cargo, my family. I did what any mom would do. Started thinking of the worst. What if the wheels fell off? What if an axle broke? Or there was some sort of misalignment? Would we make it, or would we be stranded, or even worse, injured? That's when it hit me. Literally, this was like my old job. On the surface, the car looked fine. On the surface, I was doing what I had been doing for years, accounting, CPA, at a company on the outside that seemed to have the best interest of everybody at heart. But deep down underneath all of that, there were cuts and scrapes and misalignment. To start, things were off just a little bit at first. Not enough to worry about, but over time, the situation worsens and it wears on you until you have to make a change or risk going deeper and deeper into despair. I don't know about you. If you're like me, it's always, well, what did I do wrong? What am I not seeing right? I must be part of the problem or the problem. Could never be the other way around. So you sit and you stew and you keep pouring in, and it doesn't get better. Thinking about that picture, this obviously from Google, this is an actual picture of the median we drove over. And as you can tell, I think it's kind of funny now, there's lots of tire marks and skid marks, and the vegetation there, gone. So needless to say, we weren't the only ones. And my 15-year-old felt much more vindicated after we went through this whole process. And I would second guess maybe, or venture to guess, that these are tire marks from all 50 states in the United States. Who knows? There's certainly quite a few. So that story, where do we go from here? It really, again, gets back to core values. Inside, deep inside, do you know who you are? How many of you can even picture a list of core values? I did this presentation similar before, and I had somebody ask, where do I even go to find these? Gotta love Google. We can search for sure. But up to this point, how do you ever know if you're out of alignment, personally, professionally, if something's off? If you aren't especially crystal clear on what is important to you and how you want to live your life, what your core values are. And believe me when I tell you, knowing and living your values makes decision-making in life a lot easier. So how can we start? Like I said, you can Google all sorts of lists of core values. They may even categorize them, and you can pick ones from there. Courtesy, fearless, inspiring, sincerity, all different options. And if you're like me, this is a little overwhelming. This list that you see here, this is from Scott Jeffrey, very comprehensive list. At the very end, you'll see a link tree page that I've set up for this presentation, and you can go out there and go to the web page through there, or you can search yourself. But I recommend going through the list, narrowing it down, maybe picking 10 to begin with, set those aside. Come back to those, see which ones are similar, see which ones you can narrow down, maybe to 5, especially great if you can get to 3. Clearly on one of my earlier ones, I still haven't narrowed it down to 3, but 5 is good. Then your beacon, your barometer for who you are and what you stand for. And you can use that as a compass to guide all aspects of your life, and watch how happy it makes you when your external is aligned with that internal. So some people think, well, how do I look at that list, what do I think of? For me, a lot of it was going back to my past and my history. And if I look back at stories and experiences, they were there all along. I never put a framework around it. So think back to your moments. Think, depending on how old you are, college, grade school, high school, out with friends and families, whatever it is, those moments of success and happiness. Can you see themes through all that? And like I said, I had to do this. I mean, for me, some of the excelling, learning, and growing went back to high school, college, having to overachieve, the desire, the Olympic torch run, the accolades that went with different things, helping others. I remember in high school, my summer break, I volunteered at a local shelter. And one of the older women, she looks at me, it was early in the morning, and she said, are you on probation? And I'm like, no. Why would I be on probation? Oh, usually high school kids, they only volunteer here when they're on probation. And that was back in my teens. I never thought of that. A boy in high school told me he was going to start calling me Smiley because every time he saw me, I was smiling. I never thought of that. I love to be happy. I love to smile. I love to be in a space where I can be open, honest, where there's integrity, where there's authenticity. I don't want to be at a company where there's maybe political gamesmanship. I'll never be happy. It may work for others, but I will never be happy there. Thinking through all of this and coming up with those different themes, for me, it's helping to live a fulfilling and purpose-driven life. I need a personal and professional life centered around these values that live within me. I need to live a life of my design, not what made somebody else successful, not what somebody else enjoys doing, but a life for Cynthia, a life that Cynthia designed. And again, if I know most women, we're willing to sit back and, kind of hide who we are and maybe be told or follow in somebody else's footsteps instead of being willing to be a little bit crazy and a little bit ridiculous to be ourselves. Trust yourself. So keep in mind, you're not going to be able to make a final list in the time we have today, maybe not even tonight, but the exercises will get you started and help you get in tune with what makes you really tick, which will point you towards your core values. And when you have some free time in the near future, I encourage you to work on finalizing a list of those 3 to 5 values that really align with you in your core. And once we have those core values, then what? This is the fun part. You get to measure your alignment. You get to take inventory of all the things in your life: work, family, friends, relationships, hobbies, everything, anything that touches your day and your life. Basically, measuring it against the core values that you selected, that you put on your list. So for instance, if you chose accomplishment, kindness, and trust as your top 3 values, look at your workplace. Are there meaningful goals to accomplish, and are they attainable to you? Do your coworkers treat you and others with respect and kindness? Can you trust the company? And can you trust your customers and vendors? Can they trust the company? If the answer is no to one or all of these, it might be time for a change. You might have been feeling off. And guess what? Maybe it's not you. So these should be easy questions to ask and answer in all phases of your life. Same goes for your family. Values, accomplishments, kindness, trust. Does your spouse in your situation allow you to pursue your goals? Is there kindness in the immediate extended family? Can you trust your spouse and extended family? Again, if the answer is no, what change can be made to make sure you're in alignment with what matters to you? These can be simple discussions that lead to massive shifts in your life and open the door to long-term happiness. I really believe that knowing and living your values makes this much easier to know if you're on the right path, to discover your happiness on your terms, not somebody else's. So going through all this, using all these questions, if you're out of alignment, getting into alignment is your call to action. That could look like a new role in your company, moving to a new company, or switching an entirely new career, one that checks all the values, the boxes that you listed. You can do the same with your family, working together. My husband and I have done that with our kids. What do we stand for? You might even bring in outside professionals to help you design your life according to your values. Your partner, your spouse, your kids, family members, friends might bring unique values to the table that you can build an equation and craft a happier life for all of them. Now, it sounds great, right? Yes, sign me up. How do I get there? Shouldn't be that hard. Again, took me 40-something years to figure this out and try to live this way. So it can definitely have its challenges, but most people are able to get there with dedication and some effort. Again, the real challenge, staying in alignment. So how do we stay there? A good part of that is setting our boundaries. We have to establish boundaries. If we start letting small doses of bad stuff in, we will find ourselves out of alignment quickly. Think about, have you ever had that ache or pain that seems to shift everything else in your body? We need to get rid of that right away. And how do we do that? Be very mindful of what you say yes to, what you say no to, and which of your boundaries are you giving up or letting go? Most people would say the most important thing to work on is when to say no, what to say no to. And there's a lot of people, successful people, who've had to say no to the wrong opportunities. That's the most important. And how do you know if it's a good opportunity? You look back to your core values. But it's tricky because it's really hard for us to say no, right? Women, we've been told we're the nurturers, or we feel we're the nurturers. We're born nurturers. We need to make everybody else happy first. At the end of the day, if there's a little bit of time left over for us, maybe you can have those 5 minutes. We're constantly judged on the exterior and what value we give to others, which gives very little time for ourselves. But we have needs too. And we really have to honor those needs. And we have the right to honor those needs. One problem that I know I faced is that saying no can be uncomfortable and brings me anxiety. But when we deny our needs, we are disrespecting ourselves. Our self-respect diminishes. And when you give more value to others' needs, it can create that downward spiral in yourself and create a sense of lack of self-worth. You've worked too hard and you've been through too much to let that happen. And here's the crazy secret. People will actually respect you more when you are more guarded with your time. Saying no with time gets easier and easier. So setting boundaries according to your values is a gift to ourselves and a gift to those around us. And isn't that what we should be modeling for others? So like determining your core values, you'll want to spend some additional time on establishing your own boundaries and practicing saying no. And that really leaves us just with one more piece, accountability. And really, that's what we're here for, right? Staying accountable to what we've said. Do you do it daily? Do you do it weekly? Do you have a partner? I know I've kept a spreadsheet I run every day. I keep my own spreadsheet. I fill it in. I actually broke my hand yesterday falling on my run. I have a coach who I speak with weekly. My husband has accountability partners and, different ideas on ways to hold yourself accountable. Sometimes it's just telling others what you're attempting to do. So I told you about the disastrous experience, but what have I learned from it and how have I been able to pivot? I've been at Moneta for 11 years now, and I was really on my search for what work and what companies will align with who I am at the core. Everything I touch on a daily basis is in service to the people around me, to my clients. I get to help coach and mentor. I get to take advantage of learning. We get to be honest, open, integrity, all of it. So I found a great place where I can be me and I can help others to be their best version. And in addition, really kind of what led me here today was taking all of those core values and with my husband, setting up the She Lift Project. Right now, it's a podcast where successful women can talk about what they do, how they got to the top, the challenges they faced, and the advice for the next generation. Just like a ski lift takes people to the top of the mountain, we're attempting to take women to the top of the proverbial mountain. We want to build, again, on those core values together of positivity, service, building others, personal growth, and honesty. I hope sharing my story, sharing some of the things I've learned can help you today to lean more into who are you really? Who are you? And aligning your life of happiness around being your true self. I know I got done in 30 minutes.
You did it. We're so proud. All right. In the last 30 seconds we've got, what do you want to leave people with? If they only remember one thing from this session, what do you want it to be?
That you're worth it. You're worth it to set time aside to really get to know who you are. Who are you? It's not somebody's mom. It's not somebody's spouse. It's not a coworker. It's not a business owner. Who are you? And have the courage and the faith to live your life like that, because you are unique and you are special just as you are. Put your light out there for the world And for those who aren't ready for your light, they can go to a different room.
Mm-hmm.
But the world is ready for you. And so figure out who that is and just get crazy and ridiculous enough to be you and value yourself in giving that gift to the world.
I love that. I love that. It's very reminiscent of the idea of if you're in someone's presence and they say you're too much, tell them to go find less. So I love this so much. Cynthia, thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon, for bringing your experience and your expertise to the table. We really, really appreciate it. And I hope we get to do this again soon.
Yeah, it would be great. I try to throw out positive messages all the time through the Sheila Project. So you can find me on LinkedIn, through Linktree and Facebook. Again, trying to just share what I'm learning because we're always learning, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely.